It's 10 o'clock, y'all. I'm Tim Harris. Time for 10 with Tim. Let's do it. Let's do 10 with Tim. Good to see you. You good this morning? It's a beautiful morning. My long run was today. It was really nice. It just really was. I don't like cold weather, but I can get with what we're doing right now. I just don't want it to get any colder, and I want it to last any longer. I would gladly go right back to July if y'all let me. I love to sweat. I love the heat. I love hot weather. But I know not everybody does. So anyway, we're coming into your time. Those of you who love the cold, God bless you. I'll do it with you just because I love you, and life is good anyway, isn't it? Let's finish up the covenant part, the laws and statutes part of Deuteronomy. There's a big section that we're finishing today with chapter 26. That section started with chapter 12. Way back in chapter 12, it begins with, these are the decrees and regulations you must be careful to obey when you live in the land that the Lord, the God of your ancestors, is giving you. You must obey them as long as you live. So there is a strong introduction and this strong commandment to obey, this call to obey. And now we've had, 14, chapters of just laws, statutes, regulations. And those finish in chapter 26. I'll call your attention to the end of the chapter where you have, scholars call it an inclusio, and that is just where the biblical writer will repeat something that he'll bookend a section with the same words or the same kind of words. So chapter 26 ends with, today the Lord your God commanded you to obey all these decrees and regulations, so be careful to obey them wholeheartedly. See, so it's that inclusio. He bookends this section with very similar language. Because again, remember, Moses didn't write this with chapters and verses, but at the same time, there are literary devices that let you see where the sections are. And so this is one of those sections that's ending today with chapter 26. Chapter 26 is technically the end of all those statutes and ordinances. Now, chapter 26, interestingly, chapter 12, I believe, kind of begins with worship. And interestingly enough, chapter 26 ends with matters of worship in the explanation of offerings and tithes. Now, we've talked about offerings and tithes already, of course. Chapter 26 deals with two things: the giving of the first fruits offering, and then the regular every third year tithe to the Levites. Chapter 18 talked about the first fruits briefly. Chapter 14 gave us a pretty good description of the every third year offering to support the Levites, the orphans, and the widows. But chapter 26 goes into a lot more detail in the liturgical features or the worship features, like how you bring it, where you bring it to, and what you say when you bring it, your words of worship. And I think it's really kind of interesting. First off, when you enter the land the Lord your God is giving you, I can't miss the fact that we're about to talk about two kinds of offerings. But if you want to talk about giving, you got to acknowledge that God gives first. God gives first. When you enter the land the Lord your God is giving you. So if you want to talk about, like I say, giving, you just have to acknowledge that we don't give anything that hasn't already been given to us. God is a giver. God gives to us. And so this whole description of offerings begins with that affirmation that God is the most generous giver. He gives it all. So when you enter the land the Lord your God is giving you as a special possession, and you conquered it and settled there, put some of the first produce from each crop you harvest into a basket and bring it to the designated place of worship, the place the Lord your God chooses for his name to be honored. And go to the priest in charge at that time and say to him, with this gift, I acknowledge to the Lord your God that I've entered the land that he swore. What's not clear here is whether that's supposed to be a one-time gift, like this is the first fruits literally of my being in the land, and so I bring the literal first fruits, or whether you're supposed to do this every year. I kind of lean toward every year, but right here in Deuteronomy it sort of suggests, or you could certainly read it like this is a one-time thing. I don't know that it really matters, because in chapter 26, the point I think is made I love the fact that you haven't really arrived until you got until the land produces and gives you something. It's not home. It's not the promised land until, I mean, it's a land that flows with milk and honey, they say, but it's not really a land of milk and honey until it produces milk and honey for you. Lots of times we set a goal or we'll set the end point. If our mission as a church is to make disciples and we build a new building, lots of times we think we built the new building, the job is done when the building is done and we move into it. But I think it'd be more accurate to say that it's not complete until you build the building and then the first disciples are made in it. It's got to fulfill its purpose. And I think God manages to lay out this arc of promise and fulfillment much further than we do. So in this case, am I making sense? The promise isn't fulfilled until you're holding in your hands the blessings of the land. Not just that you're living in the land, but the land is producing its blessings. And so this is the housewarming party, whatever you want to say. You don't throw the party when you move into the house. You throw the party after the first crop. And I just sort of love that. I just really, really do. I do think this is intentionally, I think this is in every year. You always bring the first fruits to God. But I do think there is this special moment when the very first fruits from the promised land are brought before God. And then notice the liturgy or the worship words that are going to be said. Every person has to say this. My ancestor, my father was a wandering Aramean. It's really interesting. Notice how this long speech, this liturgy, is really the corporate memory, the memory of the people. So it's a reminder to everyone that this is our story. This is my story. This is my song, right? And so they rehearse the whole story, and they rehearse it in terms of us. I was there. That is me. That story's my story. And so my father was a wandering Aramean. The thing that you memorialize there is that the foreparents didn't have land. They wandered. I think that's really interesting. That's what you remember about them. They didn't have a place. They didn't have a home. They were wandering. They arrived in big number. In Egypt, they became large. I mean, notice how the story gets telescoped. It moves pretty fast. It moves through this landless, homeless people that become a great nation inside of Egypt, so much so that Egypt oppresses them, makes them slaves, but they cry out to God and God hears and delivers them. So this story is very abbreviated, but it forces every rising generation to identify with the story of the nation, the story of their parents, the story of the faith. And it emphasizes just these key points. It emphasizes the memory of suffering, the memory of powerful deliverance. It emphasizes the way that God responds when people cry out, and then also his blessings and providential care. My father was a wandering Aramean, but here and now I've brought you the first portion of the harvest, that God has given me from the ground, from the land that God has given us, So it's just this picture, this amazing stepping into a story that's so much bigger than yourself. And this is part of worship, and this is the way you celebrate coming into the promised land. I love that. Then the tithe. Every third year, there is this tithe with a very specific purpose, and that is to provide for the sustenance of those who have no access to the land and its goods, the Levites, the widows, the orphans. I think this is amazing. God fully intends that every single person, every single member of the community receive the blessings of the promised land. And so there is special provision made. Don't you forget them. Over and over, don't you forget them. When you bring this offering, don't you forget the Levites. They don't have land. They don't have access to these blessings unless you share. And so there's just continual admonition to consider and share and take care of those who don't have access to the land and its blessings and its goods. I love that. As I said, that final part sort of is this call to obey the Lord's commands, which ends this section, this long, like 14 chapters of nothing but laws, regulations, statutes. So those of you who have dragged your behind through these chapters and have found them tedious and difficult and even dry, you did it. You finished all the laws and regulations of Deuteronomy. So what will follow? For tomorrow, we'll read chapters 27 and 28. I know it seems long. 28 has like 68 verses. But 27 and 28 are the blessings and the curses. And I think it's really interesting. And that's why we read them together. They go together. In many ways, they are mirror image opposites of one another. I mean, the blessings are just the inversion of the curses and vice versa. They're opposites. So read those together. Pay some attention because there are really some amazing things said here in these chapters. But anyway, one way or the other, tomorrow we'll read through chapters 27 and 28 together. Listen, have a great Thursday. It's another beautiful day. It's a little bit dry. I guess I got a Japanese maple that really needs some rain, so I'm gonna have to water it today. But I love you guys so much. Guys, you're my friends. You're my partners in the Word, and I just being with you never gets old. Have a great day. I'll see you in the morning, Lord willing, 10 o'clock for 10 with Tim. I love you.